Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Sensitive Data Manager 9.0 Product Showcase. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions to the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce our presenters, Nick Lacola, Senior Solutions Architect, and Gabriel Gems, Vice President of Product Strategy.
Good morning, and thank you very much for that introduction. All right, so today we're going to present Sensitive Data Manager 9.0 Product Showcase. We recently released our 9.0 version. It went general availability not too long ago, and we are pleased to have introduced a number of updates to our automated classification and discovery. Slide. So identifying as the leader in accurate discovery and automated classification, the foundation for all discovery, for all data security, I apologize. And that's not just something that we believe, but that is a sentiment that's shared throughout the analyst community as well as many practitioners. Slide. So our approach is to automate the process of classification, thereby reducing the overall burden on end users and automatically enforcing corporate data policies. And we do this by leveraging the results of our HIPAA-accurate discovery along with other attributes such as creation and creation modification dates, last access dates, location, data owners, and other important file attributes. We then classify persistently, we persistently classify those files by embedding within the metadata, the alternate data streams of those files, the classification information associated with our discovery results. Slide.
Gabe, AnyFind is Sensitive Data Manager's trademark validation technology, which amplifies the accuracy from typical pattern-based matching techniques for many of the common PII, PHI regulated data types by applying additional validation checks that a person would normally do. And this results in higher accuracy and fewer false positives. AnyFind examines the context of data matches, including positional characteristics, proximity to relevant terms, file type awareness to make accurate determinations. So one example that we have here shown on the left is our sea of digits check. And this is looking at what is presumed to be a credit card number with a lot of surrounding digits. And by this check, it actually can rule this out as being a false positive.
Excellent. That's a very, very good distinction to point out. We oftentimes will see other solutions that will simply attempt to perform the same activity by using just a regex, and that obviously leads to large amounts of false positives.
Yep.
Slide. So Sensitive Data Manager, in particular, our latest release, SDM 9.0, as Nick just highlights, it finds and understands data. And via automated and user-driven classification, it then enhances it. Locating proprietary institutional data, on the other hand, sensitive data that can only be understood and identified by the owners and creators of that data, was the inspiration behind our sensitive data engine, which was introduced in this release, Sensitive Data Manager 9.0. So let's go ahead and jump into our demo environment. And we will take a look at how the Sensitive Data Engine allows our customers to accomplish this by building sensitive data definitions, a sort of intelligent search grammar that allows them to define the criteria to identify the institutionally unique sensitive data.
All right. So what I'm going to show here is how we can incorporate both our built-in AnyFind highly accurate data types along with any of the custom types that can be added via regular expressions, custom dictionaries, keywords, full phrases of text, and include those in a criteria to define the sensitive data. One example I'm going to show here is a sensitive data definition for HR data. In this definition, we're presenting 4 cases to be examined. The first is we want to identify locations and we will classify them as being HR data should a single social security number be present. Another condition is utilizing a regular expression that we've keyed in for the employee ID number, and we're going to use one of the proximity checks to make sure that we're going to find these locations near a personal address. Again, one of those validated types. The proximity can be set to exact levels. Near, in our case, is a distance of within 50 characters. So you can have these within a greater than distance, less than distance using these operators. Third condition here for that could be the presence of any four of a whole list of personal identifiers: passport, SOCH, the employee number that we brought in by regular expression, or any of our names from a custom dictionary import. And the final condition looks at the condition where a date of birth is also found with a last name from that dictionary with either a telephone number or an email address. So these four conditions represent ways in which we can detect a location as being HR data. Now, the way that we can use this within a functional process gets into our workflow rules. And the workflow rules really help to define additional criteria by examining the file properties and then being able to create a manageable workflow process behind it. That could be to classify the data persistently or back here at the console for reporting purposes, but it could also be to leverage some of our downstream and automated actions, notifications, things like that. So here we're taking a classification rule that has been created here to take that HR data type that we just mentioned, and if we find that HR data type in a location, and should it meet one of these other conditions, then this file will become classified persistently. The way that we do that is include the data types that we want to be as part of this rule. That would be our custom data type HR data that was just created, and then require one of these two conditions or three conditions. That be that the target device is not one of those that is included within HR. So we can include a unique tagging system where HR devices, we know that they all exist in the same container. That could be through an AD or LDAP group. It could be a manually created container, but we know that we have isolated those devices within a container. So should we find HR data type outside of that, we will classify that data. Another condition would be if the everyone group or the everyone role has full control access to this file containing some HR data. We'd want to be notified about that. We'd want to classify that data. And finally, we can key in on some of the other file properties like last access time, date modified, file owner, attributes like this, and we can examine the fact that maybe this file hasn't been touched in more than 3 months, and then use that to propel some of our downstream actions based on this rule.
Excellent. And so I just want to highlight what you just displayed there as the context of how we are also going to locate sensitive data, and leveraging that intelligent search grammar that you built within Sensitive Data Engine. You were looking at the content. So this combination of content and context for searching for sensitive data, you can see, gets really powerful and allows our customers to locate pretty much any type of sensitive data they were looking for, both those predefined data types, as you mentioned, your PCI, your PHIs, things of that nature, along with the organization unique data types as well. All right, great. Let's pop back over to the slides. And so, as you can see, locating and classifying sensitive data at scale is no small task, and mature organizations will automate as much of that process as they can, while some of the less mature ones will need to backstop that process with user-driven classification. Now, Sensitive Data Watcher has the job of monitoring environments for the creation or existence of sensitive data and enforcing security policies. Once we have defined our policies, as you just saw Nick do, we can then locate and enforce protection automatically. So let's go ahead and jump back into our demo environment, and we'll have a look at Sensitive Data Watcher in action.
All right, now for this scenario, we are going to go through the process of what an employee might do on a day-to-day basis. We've got an email coming into our mailbox, and this may contain some sensitive information. And when that email becomes, or the attachment becomes detached and hits the system will automatically recognize that as being a new file and perform a discovery upon it. So I'll take this file attachment. What'll happen is it will compare it through those sensitive data definitions that we may have defined using our AnyFind validated sauce or any custom conditions that we've applied. And should that contain any of the sensitive data, that file is going to automatically be detected. We'll classify it appropriately, and the downstream process in terms of notification and potential actions will happen. So what you just saw there was automatically the system picked up the detection change, searched that file, classified it as health information or medical billing.
And is that a little icon I see that just popped up over that file?
That's right. When we define those workflow rules that we just looked at a moment ago, we can actually customize what icon would be apparent via any of those rules, and those can be appended to the files so that any user that's viewing these files in Explorer view or as they're reaching out to some network file shares can see those and gain awareness as to the contents of the data without having to actually go into it.
Excellent. And so the example used there was, a user saving a file from email, but obviously that would apply to if someone were to download a file, save a file from a remote driver or anything of that nature. Once files hit the system where sensitive data watcher is, it will perform that automated classification, that automated discovery and classification. Another common scenario occurs when new sensitive data is created, right? And this can happen in the form of, let's say, report generation. For the purpose of this example, Nick is going to simply create a new document and he's going to insert some sensitive information in here. Now, again, this also happens when someone is actually creating new documents in this sense, but if I were to say log into a single source of record, whether it be my CRM or an HR database, and save a file, run some report and save a file, that too would generate a new document on the end system, whereby sensitive data manager is now also going to perform the same activity we saw just a minute ago. Now, Nick, what did you put inside that file? What kind of sensitive information did you put in there in our hypothetical scenario?
Oh, that scenario while you were talking, I typed in a SOCH number for a potential user, and in practice that could be any data type that was being watched for. And on save, the system knows that that file has been newly created or modified, searches it, and discovers and appends the icon that I've uploaded for a single instance of SOCH.
Excellent. And so we can switch back to the slides just now. And so without automated classification, it's very non-trivial to automate that process of policy enforcement. Attempting to do so across even a small user base, there's always room for error, and we know based on real-world scenarios and much research that a large amount of sensitive data gets leaked by simple mishandling of that information. And so sensitive data watcher helps enforce those policies automatically, and as you saw, it also gives users that visual cue as to what they're interacting with. So some organizations will either perform some of these tasks manually or will need to empower users with the ability to classify those files manually while they are in the process of adopting automated classification. And what we've done is built into the system the ability to empower employees to add data classifications based on set policies and alert them to the sensitivity of their data. So now employees can easily classify their data through intuitive add-ons for most of their widely used applications, such as Microsoft Office, Adobe Acrobat, and we even have it built now into Explorer. So let's jump back into our demo environment, and we'll have a look at the user-driven classification process.
Right on. So just a moment ago, we classified a couple of these files, or the classifications were appended automatically based on just attaching it and those workflow rules running and examining the data and classifying it appropriately and automatically. If we were to go into any single one of these files, we would then be able to see the the modes of classification that had already been added to this, because now we have the application integrations within the Office suite application. So within Outlook, within Word, within Excel, PowerPoint, and even Adobe, which we'll see in a second. So you can see that medical billing, that was the topmost level of classification. But as a user, perhaps I come in and I understand that this should be classified as a higher level. Well, with the application integration, we can have that user select the appropriate level classification, which could be higher. It becomes appended here within the user view. And when that document's saved, the classification is updated. Now, there's other ways to classify here as well, and this can happen interactively. So anywhere you are where there is a file, we can right-click on that file and apply any of the classifications that are defined at the head end of the console for you. And we also have the mode to view the classifications that have been applied within the file properties. So we can click here into the classification panel there as well and see those classifications and append them.
Excellent. And it looks like you could apply multiple classifications as well there too. Seems like you'd be able to give the system different types of assign different data types to that classification as well. If I were to do that, which one of those are going to show up in the interface here? And I see, for example, the one on the left seems to have what looks like a PII identifier.
Right. So we allow a hierarchy for the classification conditions to be present. So you notice that in that example for this medical billing statement, medical billing was previously the highest level of classification. We'd want to reflect that icon, and when we added the high, then it appended it to its icon. So the highest level, as you would order them within your hierarchy, will appear.
Great, excellent. Let's pop back over one more time. Let's have a talk. Let's look at administrative remediation. So the management of sensitive data begins with that accurate discovery process, as Nick has been highlighting, and that needs to be coupled with remediation to drive risk downwards. And sensitive several ways of reducing the risk associated with sensitive data once identified. So some environments will have policies that state certain data types are not allowed to be present in those environments and should be immediately destroyed. For example, primary account numbers in non-cardholder data environments would violate PCI regulations. And you may have a policy that also states that HR data is not allowed to reside in the cloud. Data handlers can easily remediate these findings. Administrators can easily enforce those corporate policies and ensure regulatory compliance. Let's jump back into our demo environment one more time and let's have a look at our remediation activities.
Right on. So we're all set up here, and now we have a policy which restricts that any file that is of a classified nature, maybe there's certain attributes that we are going to discover about that file that would warrant that file to be listed as classified. So I'm going to copy up a couple files here. One is a classified internal memo, and the other will be a medical billing file. And we'll just move those over to the system, and it will then pick up on these files. Based on the actions, what we're expecting here is that the classified memo is going to be quarantined. That's something that allows us to replace the file with a text file with some custom text behind it. And that action will also be sent back to the console for our review and modification.
So from an administrative perspective, I just want to touch on this really quickly. What you performed here was you moved a bit of sensitive data, a bit of sensitive information, a file with some sensitive classification to it, onto a system that's enforcing these corporate policies that stated that that file type should not have been there.
That is correct.
And it appears to replace it with some type of a stub.
Right, and so what happens is that file, the stub file appears, you can open that, you can customize the text within this message, and it can be as specific as you need it to be.
Great.
And
so that would stop someone from violating our data handling policies.
Exactly.
Okay. Excellent. So as part of a complete enterprise solution, Sensitive Data Manager quickly provides familiar and easy-to-use business views as well, providing ideal reporting. Historical multidimensional data can be generated by the console or by direct database access for aggregated metrics and strategic analysis. We've updated a number of the canned reporting types into Sensitive Data Manager 9.0, and you can see a screenshot of some of those here. There's a number of ways that we can look at and slice this data, but basically all of the actions that you've seen us build so far can be reported on. So we can look at the activity of sensitive information in use as well. So we can see when new files have been discovered and classified. We can see when policies have been enforced, remediating files as well. So in the scenario we just saw, we quarantined the file. We moved it off of a system where we were not allowing that type of sensitive information, and we replaced it with a stub file, and that information is sent back to the reporting console. If we were to take a different action, such as deleting that file completely, all of those updates and then all of those activities would be reflected back in the console as well. Slide. So searching large data stores is a necessity. That's something that we've been encountering from the day we designed and built the system. And discovery teams perform distributed searches by pooling resources and reducing the time required to perform discovery across terabytes of data. Most organizations, if not all, have a large amount of existing data. While it's important to perform that automated classification as new information is created, what we also know is that all of that existing information throughout your organization also needs to be looked at and classified. And so since our discovery teams allow us to perform those types of activities. You can do many-to-one searches, many-to-many searches, one-to-many searches. So you can pool your resources to distribute that workload. And in the screenshot you can see here, we have a team of discovery agents performing their task, and you can see the workload being distributed and the overall progress of them. And so that concludes today's product showcase. I'd like to thank you again for joining us. Nick, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you so much for walking us through the solution.
Thank you.
And if there are any questions, I didn't see any come in, we'll pause for a minute, see if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we can go ahead and wrap up. If you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to send us an email. Make sure you reach out to your representative.
On behalf of Identity Finder and our presenters today, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.